another footnote here because I've noticed throughout my life that there is a kind of manipulation that people do that is like an occult practice. And by occult, I don't mean that in the pejorative sense, in the negative sense, just in the sense of a person who uses their human system. How do I mean this? You've heard of ESP, extrasensory perception. Well, there is an extrasensory kind of use or abuse of the human system. Okay, for instance, I'll give you an example. And I'm sure that anyone who is a little bit sensitive has had some kind of experience like the one I'm going to tell. So just pay attention about this and then just feel whether you've also felt something like this before. There are times when people can manipulate you, and manipulate, I always thought it came from the word manos or mana, something with man, which means hand. But actually, I'm not sure of the origin of the root of that word, because in Sanskrit, manaha is mind. Okay, so they say, or it's said in the scripture, that the mind is the most powerful of the senses, or it's the sixth sense. Okay, so manipulation, meaning that somebody causes you to do something by maneuvering you into some kind of position, either by talking to you or in some way. Okay, the kind of manipulation I'm talking to you about is an occult manipulation. This happened to me one time. The most clearly that I remember it happening to me was when I was in Germany, and my driver's license had quote unquote expired. In other words, I still had a good driver's license. In other words, my driver's license from USA was still valid, but there was a time period within which you could have your driver's license transferred and get a German license for that without having to go through the driver's school, but that time period had lapsed. So I had to, in order to get a German license, go to driving school in Germany, which is a big thing, because in Germany it's not like here in the US. Not at all. You have to take a certain number of hours behind the wheel with an instructor in a specially equipped car. Otherwise, you can't get a driver's license, and it's expensive. It cost me about $1,000. Okay, and that's how much it was in Germany at that time. And actually, the guy gave me a really good deal. It should have cost more, like $1,500 to $2,000. That's how to get it, because a driver's license in Germany is forever. It's lifetime. Okay, I still have it. But the point is that this instructor, you have to remember, okay, sitting in the passenger seat, all he has is, I think he had the brake and the clutch on his side. He doesn't have the steering wheel, so he's not in total control. And he's got somebody, some dep, as they say, sitting to the left of him, who's driving a car and doesn't necessarily know what they're doing. This man was exercising a kind of control through his navel center, through the Manipuraka chakra, and what he was doing was he was transmitting Rajas energy. Now, I have never in my life felt it so clearly as I did when I was sitting in the driver's seat. When I was sitting in the driver's seat, I became a total ignorant fool. Now, I know how to drive. I've been driving for 25, 30 years by this time point. So the point was, I was a good driver with a lot of driving experience, but I had to go through this process in order to get a driver's license in Germany, which I wanted. So I had to sit in that seat of the learner and have this man, quote unquote, teach me how to drive, which was a very interesting experience, and I did learn a lot from him. But mainly, what I learned was that people can manipulate others in an occult fashion through the Manipuraka chakra. I felt it so clearly, because suddenly, when I would sit in the driver's seat, I would do things that I was not conscious of wanting to do, and I felt really like I was being remotely controlled. And that guy was using me as an example, and he would basically abuse me verbally and do all kinds of things, saying what a fool and what an ignorant person you are, and you're so stupid, and why can't you drive? Okay, and he did this to all of his students. Okay, that was his thing. Okay, but basically what he was doing was he was manipulating through this chakra, because I knew how to drive, but he was so powerful in his occult powers, he was able to control my physical body with his, because he was sitting in very close proximity to me, and he had a very strong willpower, and that willpower was expressed through the Manipuraki chakra, through his ego. Okay, now this is what I want us to talk about. This is the thing that needs to be avoided. Now, what is ego? I said just a few minutes ago. Ego is the concept or the perception of the self as a separate being. That's all it is. It's not a negative thing. You don't have to speak of ego in a pejorative manner to say, ego meaning this is evil, this is bad. Well, okay, it's not conducive to the way our world, we would like the world to develop right now, that people should be having a lot of ego. That may be, but thinking about it in this negatively poled manner is really not conducive to getting where we want to go. If we want to transcend it, we need to look at it in a more objective way. Yes, objective. In other words, ego is simply a state where a person has, their system is overtaken by rajas, and the intellect is overtaken by rajasic energy, and the feeling is that I am separate from the others. That's all it is. Okay, so exercising occult powers, transmitting rajasic energy to other forms through the third chakra, through the pure force of will, in a state of egoistic separation, causes a lot of pain to people. And basically what is that is what we call imposition. And it's interesting when you think of the word impose, like superimpose. In other words, you're projecting your will into the form of another person through the third chakra center, and you're getting attached to those other forms. And this attachment is a form of bondage for the person who is doing the remote control, and also for the people who are being remotely controlled. Okay, this happens a lot between bosses and employees. It happens totally between mothers and fathers and their children. A lot of times. And it can also be, the reverse can also be true. The children can also be remotely controlling the parents. It depends on who has the stronger ego, the stronger self-identification as an individuum. In German they would say individuum. Let's see, an individual feeling. I am separate from others. Okay, all of this is kind of philosophy and hearsay, and not necessarily, I'm not necessarily transmitting my experience. It's a theory that I'm having right now. I'm just kind of working it out. Okay, so what was I going to say about this? Okay, so where we need to get from here, from this place of people trying to manipulate each other, is to go into the feeling of I am the self in all beings. When we go into the feeling of I am the self in all beings, then we're working for the good of all. And ultimately, in that state of consciousness, I am the self in all, we will not harm the others, because we're working ultimately for the highest good. And that, I believe, is where Gita is trying